In our episodes, we discuss cases and topics that might be distressing or disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. On the morning of Tuesday, May 26, 1998, Woodbury County authorities responded to a call at a home south of Sioux City, Iowa. Initial reporting on Wednesday, May 27th from Maggie O'Brien in the Des Moines Register stated authorities had found a woman dead at a rural home. The woman revealed in the article was Patricia Jauron. Patricia Jauron was 45 years old and recently retired from her job as a secretary at Sergeant Bluff Middle School in Iowa. Patricia was a member of the school board and had worked her way up in the school system, starting as a school aide and then becoming the middle school secretary. Patricia was married to Jean Jauron, and they had two sons, Jason and Kevin, who were both older and moved out. Jean had also recently retired from a career with Mid-American Energy, and Jean and Patricia had plans to travel in their retirement. Now, at the time of her death, Jean and Patricia had just moved to a new home at 1515 Old Highway 141, and their old home was actually just right across the street at 1516 Old Highway 141. Patricia was found deceased at their old home. Now, friends of the Jaurons said that the two had inherited their new home from an elderly neighbor and had been living in it for about 6 months at the time of her death. According to the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, investigators were at the scene until late Tuesday evening. Witnesses at the time said the crime scene was cordoned off and that police seemed to be centering their investigation on a pickup truck that was parked nearby. Now, beyond revealing it was a family member who placed the 911 call, investigators were very tight-lipped about the scene, not revealing Patricia's official cause of death or confirming other reports about the circumstances surrounding why she was at the old home. They also weren't revealing why the death was being considered a homicide, but that circumstances indicated foul play. Early on, reports were circling that Patricia was scheduled to meet a prospective buyer at their old house. Now, despite living in their new house for about 6 months, they were still trying to sell their old home, and they also had a lot of their belongings still in the old home, and they were trying to sell some of those as well. By Thursday, May 28th, this was confirmed by investigators. According to the Des Moines Register, investigators said that the day Patricia was murdered, she had plans to show a waterbed to a person who had responded to an advertisement she had placed on the KSCJ Swap Shop show. Investigators also revealed, following an autopsy, that Patricia had died of multiple stab wounds. Her body was found in the yard of the old home, and she was killed shortly before 911 was called. Now, reporting by Michele Linck in the Sioux City Journal stated that Jean Jauron had gone to the house and was the one to call 911 after suspecting there was a problem at the old home. The medical examiner said there was no evidence Patricia had been sexually assaulted. They declined to say how many times Patricia had been stabbed, what type of knife was used, or if the weapon had been found. Investigators said a suspect had not been identified, but said that a red vehicle was seen in the area at the time of the murder. Now, before I mentioned that witnesses said on that first day, investigators were focusing their attention on a pickup. That pickup is never mentioned again in any subsequent reporting, but their focus quickly turns to this red vehicle that was seen in the area. Despite these details, investigators said they didn't believe there was any imminent danger to the public following her murder. This, to me, suggests they believed Patricia was targeted in the attack. Now, to say the community was shocked by Patricia's murder would be an understatement. Patricia was well known and respected in the community. She was described as being committed, unselfish, and always looking out for the interests of the school and the children. A friend of Patricia's was quoted in the Sioux City Journal as saying, "It wasn't just anybody that was murdered. She was a wonderful person." That friend added that Patricia had touched the lives of so many children in the school. She was someone the kids trusted and came to for advice. It makes you wonder how someone could do something so brutal to her. At this point in the investigation, just a few days in, investigators seem to be walking this fine line between wanting to release information to the public to help generate tips, but also needing to withhold details of the murder so they could use that information effectively while pursuing those leads. The Woodbury County Sheriff relayed that they are looking into who responded to Patricia's radio advertisement, but that this was just one focus of the search. He added that there's dangers in only focusing on the most promising lead. And let's remember, the biggest lead at this moment in time is the person who responded to the radio show ad that Patricia had posted about the waterbed, and that there was that red vehicle in the area at the time of the murder. Now, they don't confirm if they believe the person who responded to the radio ad was the person with the red vehicle or not, but that seems to be what they're insinuating in a lot of the newspaper articles I'm reading at the time. Rolling into June, residents and businesses in Woodbury County came together. They raised around $6,000 for a reward fund, but investigators continued with few leads and very little new information being released to the public. The Sioux City Journal reported on June 5th that the Sheriff's Department and other area law enforcement agencies continued looking for a red passenger car that was seen at the address during the time of the killing, which they suspected occurred between 9 and 9:45 a.m. On June 13th, the Sioux City Journal reported that investigators still had no new information, but that they were waiting for forensic test results to come back that could hopefully point them in the direction of who killed Patricia. This article also states that authorities were considering speaking with a criminal profiler to study the case, but that decision was still a ways off. On July 30th, Lynn Zershing reported in the Sioux City Journal that the red vehicle spotted at the scene continued to be the primary focus of investigators. As the article states, it's clear at this point they still have not identified the driver of the red vehicle or the person who responded to the radio ad. Woodbury County Sheriff Dave Amick said no strong new leads had developed, and they continued to plead to the public to call in with any information they had. He was quoted as saying, "We are still looking for a smaller red vehicle, which was seen during that time frame. We are still trying to identify that vehicle." He goes on to say, "There may be people in this community who probably have a suspicion who this may be, but don't think is important enough. My message today is, even if it seems so remote, please still share that with us. There is no such thing as a bad lead, just some that are better than others." Now, it's also clarified that Gene Jauron found his wife's body in the yard downhill from the home prior to calling 911. Investigators say they've been working with other law enforcement agencies across the country, trying to see if similar murders had occurred, but nothing had come back as being potentially related. It's also said that while they have other leads they were pursuing, the red car is their biggest question mark, and at a minimum, that person might be a good witness or could be a suspect. Now, months go by with very little reporting and no new leads, with investigators admitting they have run out of investigative paths. In November, however, in an article written by Jason Clayworth in the Des Moines Register, it's revealed that Woodbury County officials have turned to the FBI for help in solving Patricia's murder. They say they've exhausted all leads and the case has gone cold. Investigators presented the case to the National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime. After this presentation, a captain with the Woodbury County Sheriff's Department said their review gave them several leads, but that all had been discounted. Another investigator said no profile was made of a suspect. Now, at this point, years go by with very little reporting and no new leads. In 2002, Jim Jenkins reported in the Sioux City Journal that authorities would be reviewing Patricia's unsolved murder. The Woodbury County Sheriff's Office and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation said they plan to re-interview witnesses, hoping new information would turn up. Sheriff's Deputy David Fox said at the time, "We'll see if there's anything we might have missed. We don't believe we've missed anything. It's just to go over the case with the witnesses to see if they can add any information to getting this crime solved." But Fox said that time has not run out on the investigation. He said, "I think with the right information, time's not going to matter. A good lead could still be developed." If anything came from that 2002 review of the case, I wasn't able to find it in my research. In 2005, Jean Jauron spoke with reporter Melissa Lanzarakis during an interview with KTIV News Channel 4. This is, from what I see, one of the first times that Jean Jauron has spoken with the public. And during this interview, he gives his account of what happened the day of Patricia's murder. Now, according to Jean, the couple had held a yard sale at some point prior to Patricia's murder. And he said that there was a person who attended that yard sale and was apparently had paid for this dresser that day, but the person never came back to pick it up. He said then that that same man then called several times afterward, inquiring about purchasing the waterbed and wanted to set up a time to meet. Jean said the man told him he worked at an area packing plant and that the phone calls the guy made were traced to a payphone near a local convenience store. Jean alleges that Patricia went to the old house at the time she had scheduled with this person and that she was only supposed to be gone for a few moments. Jean said that from his home across the highway, he could see a red car and believed it belonged to the person looking at the waterbed and who would eventually kill his wife. Jean goes on to say that when Pat didn't return home, he went over to the old house to check on her. When he arrived, he said he found the waterbed covered in blood. Jean Jauron is quoted as saying, "He'd hit her in the head, knocked her down, and tied her up. She still had the twine on her one arm, but she got loose. He started stabbing. She got out the basement door, and she got out into the yard, and he must have stabbed all the way out." Jean said he found Patricia's body over an embankment and that all he could do was hold her. He claimed that the stabbing had been so forceful that the knife's tip had actually broken off in her chest. Jean called 911 at 10:52 a.m. And according to the medical examiner, they believe Patricia had died sometime shortly after 9 a.m. Now, I haven't found any articles with comments from investigators on Jean's version of events, so I don't have anything to use to really corroborate his account. His comments about a yard sale and that person calling back multiple times isn't mentioned in any of the other articles on the case. The only mention is that someone called responding to a radio ad Patricia had put out. But Jean doesn't mention this radio ad in his recounting of events. I also haven't read any statements from investigators on the extent to which Jean himself was investigated for Patricia's murder, but it's definitely safe to assume that he was investigated. Investigators called the murder savage and personal in nature, indicating the victim likely knew her killer. Now, whether that was someone she knew deeply like Jean or someone she had met in passing, like a person at a yard sale or someone who had responded to a radio ad, I don't know. Now, in 2015, the Iowa Cold Cases Facebook page made a post on the 17th anniversary of Patricia's murder. And from the tone of that post, it seems clear that they have their suspicions about Jean. Now, I don't bring this up to gossip. Iowa Cold Cases is a well-known and respected organization in Iowa. The founder, Jody Ewing, she is a journalist who helped stand up the most recent cold case division in Iowa, which happened just last year in 2024. Now, in this post, they highlight that Jean appears to be the only witness and person who saw the red vehicle that was the main focus of the investigation. They also bring up that Jean had a girlfriend after Patricia died, and she left him because she was afraid of him. And according to this post, Jean had threatened this girlfriend by bringing a photo of her to where she worked, and that the photo appeared to be covered in holes from a shotgun blast. Now, I don't know where Iowa Cold Cases got this information. They don't list their sources, but in most of their posts on their website, they do extensively list their sourcing and if they get information from anyone directly. I think it's certainly valid to wonder if Gene had something to do with this. And again, I'm certain he was investigated after Patricia's murder. The extent to which he was investigated, I am not sure. That's never been made public, and police and investigators have never commented on it. Now, Gene Jauron passed away in 2012, and he always believed that someone in the area knew what happened to Patricia. If you have any information on the murder of Patricia Jauron, please contact the Woodbury County Sheriff's Office at 712-279-6010, or you can submit a tip anonymously via Crime Stoppers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cardinal Crimes. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, giving us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, and sharing this episode with others. You can find us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram with the handle @CardinalCrimes, and you can send us any case suggestions, questions, or topics you would like covered there or to our email, cardinalcrimes@gmail.com. Until next time, friends, take care of each other and take care of yourself.